C'è una domanda là in mezzo. Se si alza coraggiosamente così la individuano.
Buonasera, io vorrei fare una domanda a Bill Helmut riguardo a questa crisi economica, perché citavi prima tra le varie ricette che dovrebbe avere il nostro paese è quello di liberare il mercato, aumentare la concorrenza, però io vedo dei paesi che attuano un liberalismo molto spinto, però non se la passano molto bene, ci sono delle disuguaglianze sociali molto forti, e quindi volevo chiederti se dopo questa crisi hai anche una critica da fare al liberalismo, e che cosa pensi di quei movimenti che si stanno diffondendo soprattutto tra i giovani, che sostengono che la crescita economica non può essere qualcosa di illimitato perché andrebbe a sbattere contro un limite ambientale, di sostenibilità ambientale. Grazie.
Ecco, io mi auguro che Bilemot abbia... Esiste una possibile risposta breve a questa domanda, che prevederebbe un paio di convegni.
I, of course, apologize again for answering in English. First, it's no coincidence that the richest countries in the world are actually the most liberal. That is true over time. It's not doesn't mean that they operate smoothly or without troubles, but actually the evidence of the last 200 years is, I would say, in favor of competition, but with clear rules, and that is where I am very much in line with Roger. The point is that the state is important as the setter of rules. The crisis of the financial system in the last 3 years was because the rules were not properly enforced or were not themselves clear rules or good rules, and it was a failure of rule setting. But that doesn't mean that markets were wrong. On economic growth and the environment, I note that in the West we have got richer every year while our environment has got cleaner, that the air is cleaner, the water is cleaner, and therefore I don't think we can say that the environment and economic growth are incompatible. They need to be reconciled through often regulation and taxes to internalize the social costs of environmental damage. So the state is required, but they are not incompatible.
Grazie. Grazie per la sintesi. Un'altra domanda? Là in fondo, ci sono le braccia alzate proprio in fondo. Ok, sì, lì, grazie.
Grazie mille. Io ho una domanda e mi sono occupata per ragioni di ricerca di cooperative di lavoro e ho trovato nei casi che ho analizzato molti casi di imprese estremamente competitive che però, anche per evidenti motivi di governance interna, tutelano estremamente la stabilità dei posti di lavoro. Cioè scelgono una competitività sotto il vincolo del non tagliare sui posti di lavoro. Da qui prendo la mia domanda, cioè come il lavoro rientra nel pensiero di un'impresa aperta e innovativa, che credo che sia un tema assolutamente fondamentale, e se è possibile pensare cosa pensano i presenti.
Facciamo così, scelga lei da chi vuole la risposta, altrimenti diventa difficile.
Allora chiediamo la risposta all'autore del libro, che se ha incontrato degli esempi, che esempi ha incontrato nell'Italia in questo senso. Grazie.
Well, I think I'd answer in two parts. The first part is that always the definition of modernity is that it is a question of constant adaptation, in which old technologies and old ways of doing things decline, and new companies appear or new technologies appear. And I think a modern a modern society needs to be adaptive, which means that it destroys jobs at the same time as creating jobs. And the important thing is that an economy has both creation and destruction. Second, I think innovative companies that I write about in the book are all growing companies. So they are stabilizing jobs not by some form of protection, but rather by constant change and adaptation and growth, by ambition, as Andrea Guerra wrote about and talked about, that the best protection for jobs is actually growth and prosperity and constant adaptation to modernity. And that, I think, is the evidence of the companies that I visited.
Would you like to say something more? You mean, no, yeah. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I will. Yes, sure.
Ok. Allora, ci sarebbero delle conclusioni, saremo brevissimi. Bill Emmott chiude lui e poi così lasciamo la parola al dibattito tra Roberto Cota e Nichi Vendola.
Okay, well, thank you, Mario. I just wanted to pick up a few points just to say what I had got from the debate and from the contributions of my panelists. I think top of the list is a shared interest in competition. As I traveled around Italy, plenty of people told me that Italians don't like competition. Well, that's certainly not true of this panel, but also my answer to that is that it's not true of anyone. None of us like competition. I don't like competition. Adam Smith, my countryman, wrote more than 200 years ago that businessmen never like competition. They always try to conspire against competition. And the question is, how do you enforce it? The question is, how do you make it fair? And that is what we should focus on. Second issue, the role of the public sector. One of the difficult things to understand for a foreigner visiting Italy and studying Italy is the attitude that Italians have to the public sector. Is it a thief that they want to avoid giving their money to, as Alessandro Profumo pointed out? Tax evasion, is it a prison that you want to avoid? Or is it the source of your mother's milk, the provider of entitlements and flows of money? I think that there's a basic ambiguity, a lack of clarity about what's the real role of the public sector, and I think it comes to what Ivan Lobello says about differences between the public sector and the state and a lack of discipline. Third point I wanted to pick up was just a remark about Roger's point about a focus on women. I feel I cannot resist telling a story of an interview I gave to Fahrenheit radio program in Rome recently, where the last question that the interviewer asked was, why did you not write more about women in your book? And there are two answers to that. The first of which I did not say, which is that I think it's dangerous to write about things that you may be more complex and difficult for an outsider to understand. But second, the answer I did give was that I wanted to write about things I could be optimistic about. And I didn't see much that I could be optimistic about the role and status of women in Italian society, about change or about acceptance of change. And I feel maybe there's a future book in which I should write about that, but I don't feel that there's something positive to be said there. Fourth, just let me say I agree strongly with Alessandro Profumo that he is right that modernità is better than my version of innovatori. He's right, that is what we should be focusing on, modernity. Finally, I just want to say, partly as a provocation to Mario Calabresi, who's sitting next to me, and since I write now editorials for La Stampa, he is my boss, so I like to provoke my boss. We have talked about accountability. We've talked about responsibility. The chief source of this, of course, should be the media. It seems to me, as a media person, that too often in Italy, the media does not act as a source of accountability and responsibility enough, at least. Partly because, particularly on television, noise and entertainment in political debate is a substitute for actual accountability or actual policy discussion, but also because the media is often part of the system. It is not a sufficient critic of the system, and it is not, in my judgment at least, and I'd like to be proved wrong, not really a reformist part of the system. But I said that as a provocation to Mario, because I know that La Stampa is an exception in that, and is really a... But we journalists do have a big responsibility, I think, in promoting change and promoting progress and reform. So finally, I want to thank Mario for chairing this panel so kindly and skillfully, and especially to thank the panel and all of you for coming along this evening. And I look forward very much to the next debate. Thank you.
Grazie a tutti. Io prenderei solo per chiudere una frase di Andrea Guerra, che secondo me può essere la sintesi di tutto: avere senso di urgenza e non perdere tempo con gli alibi. Lascio la parola a Elena Fenili. Elena Fenili, se può.
Io a nome di Rena voglio ringraziare